Okay, everybody, I am so excited to introduce you to the creative process. You've probably seen these posters around the classroom. Now it's time to finally learn it, which I think is actually the most important part of making art. It's this brainstorming phase. I can tell you right now that this list looks a lot worse than it really is. So let's dive in and we'll just go through each step together. You've already done the first two steps, which is to research the artistic style. I've decided to do Hakusai's The Great Wave for my project. Now, I don't want to copy this exact work of art, but I want to use his style. So what you probably don't know is he actually did 36 paintings of Mount Fuji. So in the back of all of his paintings are these little icons of Mount Fuji. So I wanted to look at some of his pieces as a whole just to kind of get an idea of his style. You can see that he has a lot of black contour outlines, kind of simple colors. So those are the things that I'm really going to pull into my project. So part of this project was finding quotes. So you normally won't have to do this step, but what I did is I kind of looked through some quotes that were similar to waves and stuff. So I thought that these two quotes would go really well with my imagery. I haven't decided on which one I want to use yet, but I like them both. So those are my quotes. Second step is to brainstorm and research subject matter. So you can see that this version of The Great Wave has cats all over it. This painting has been redone so many different times, so I wanted to have one version of that. What I'd like to do is I want to put the coronavirus, the virus thingies, these things, on the waves. So I wanted to see how somebody put something else on the wave. I also want to make sure that I know how to draw a boat, so I included this in my research. So the idea is that you're researching what you're going to draw, and the best thing that you can do is actually find photographs of real images, not other people's art. But in this case, you can see that I'm using his art as my reference because I really want to maintain his style. Okay, so then the next step is to draw thumbnail sketches. First, what I like to do is I like to just trace a playing card. In this case, it's a Pictionary card, but I like to trace it about 4 times, so I've got 4 rectangles to start from. From there, I drew my 4 thumbnails. And when I'm drawing my thumbnails, I'm really thinking about those elements and principles of design, different compositions and angles, and I'm gonna go over those a little bit more later, so I'm gonna skip through that. Okay, so here are my first 2 thumbnails. You can see that they're not super elaborate. I didn't spend a lot of time on them, about 2 minutes each or less. And this was just my way of getting my ideas out. I've got my wave, I've got my little coronaviruses on the edges of the white part of the wave. I want to have people of all races and colors in this boat together. And then I kind of practice where I might put my quote. Here, it's a little more simple. I've got a guy riding the wave, and it says, "Life comes in waves, learn to ride them." So those are my first 2 thumbnails. From here, I was like, shoot, I don't have any more ideas. I better research again. So I did a little more research, and I decided what I wanted to do is put a mask on a wave, and I found this Cookie Monster, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna totally use that. I also realized I wanted to use the globe for another one, so I've got my imagery that I'm kind of pulling from, and these are my second 2 thumbnails. You can see that I've put the wave, or the mask, on top of the wave, and then I use that same idea that I had before, and then here I've got the globe encircled in here, and then somebody riding the wave. So it's kind of the same 2 ideas that I've just adjusted a little bit differently. At this point in time, you want to evaluate your thumbnails. I definitely recommend doing at least 4 thumbnails because the more ideas that you generate, the better this is going to be. Once you've got 4 thumbnails, that's where you're like, okay, what am I trying to communicate for this work of art? Am I trying to make this a happy piece? Is it supposed to be funny? Is it serious? What's the mood that I'm trying to communicate to the viewer? So in my case specifically, it may not be your favorite, but I'm going to choose the Cookie Monster one with the mask. And the reason why is because I want this to be funny and uplifting and not crazy serious. I also don't want it to be offensive, like, hey man, learn to ride the wave. I want it to be like, hey, we're working all together. So now that I've selected my favorite of the 4 thumbnails, I need to figure out if this is exactly what I want to go through, or do I want to maybe think about adding a little bit more or altering it slightly. So at this point in time, I'm going to do a little bit more research and brainstorming. So I've got my wave. I know that that's like my main piece. I'm going to redraw this, which I did not do because of time. I would redraw this a couple different ways just to really kind of refine it and make sure that it's exactly what I want. And I definitely want to include Mount Fuji in the background with like little coronavirus balls coming out of it. Anyway, like I said, I didn't have time. So then you're going to draw your rough draft that has that idea in it. Again, I didn't do it, but you will. And you're going to select your color palette and test that out. So you maybe don't want to use the exact same colors as the artist you're referencing, but even if you are, you've got to figure out how to make those colors. Like, how are you going to mix them in order to match that palette? And then, play with techniques. Once you've done all that, you kind of want to apply some of those techniques to your rough draft to see if it's successful. Again, I didn't do that step. And then it's time to start your final draft. Now for your final draft, don't forget that anytime you're painting, unless you buy a primed canvas, you have to prime your surface with a flat white paint. In this case, gesso is typically the most recommended, but if you have white house paint, that works great too. And you want to do at least 2 coats, sometimes 3 or 4, just to make it nice and flat to start with. And then it's final draft time. But this artistic process, guys, is essential to you being able to have a successful work of art, because we've all dove into a project and realized we had no idea what we were doing. So this takes out the guesswork when you're doing your final draft and allows you to have a very successful, smooth final draft. Don't worry, you don't have to do all these steps in this order, and you can even skip a few. Just a good guide to help you get started. Good luck.